Okay, so we're going to take a look at simplifying rational expressions, which basically just means simplifying ugly fractions, more or less, if you want to think about it. So I wanted to give a quick reminder about dividing and about fractions. So if you think for a minute, what's 4 divided by 4? It's not 0, it's 1. What's negative 2 divided by negative 2? In that case, we also get 1. How about a divided by a? Well, still get a. You can think about that, write it out as a fraction if you want, a over a. Well, sometimes we think about that and we talk about simplifying things, one from the top, one from the bottom. Well, what's left? It's not nothing, it's not 0, it is in fact 1. And we can go to more elegant or crazy looking things. What is bracket a plus 1 divided by bracket a plus 1 bracket? And in this case, much like we've seen before, it's something divided by its exact same thing. Something divided by its exact same thing. So anything divided by itself, a plus 1 divided by a plus 1, would in fact simplify to exactly 1. We've got to keep this in mind for ourselves when we're trying to simplify these ugly fractions, is that we're looking to reduce things down by common factors that they maybe have on top and bottom, or common terms to the top and bottom, because if we can turn it into 1, remember, if we're timesing it by anything else, it's not going to change it. So let's take a look at how this works. And that's just that idea that anything times by 1 then just stays the same as well. So if I look at my first example, I've got 4 bracket m minus 1, 8 bracket m, and I'm going to look to see if there's anything I can cancel from top or bottom here. And in fact, the only thing I can do is think about 4 and 8. Well, 8 is just 2 times 4. So I can cancel those common 4's, and I'm going to get m minus 1 over m. And for any of you guys getting excited about this idea that you see there's an m and an m on top as well, and you're thinking, oh, I can cancel those. Please don't ever do that. It'll make me cry. On the top, I've got more than one term. I am doing m minus 1, so it's all of this stuff divided by m, which is different than m divided by m. You'll notice it's not the same thing on the top and the bottom, so I cannot just cancel off them because of that plus term in there. If I had m over m, yes, sure, you could cancel those, but with that extra term in there, not allowed. Cannot do that. So our final answer on that one would just be m minus 1 over m. We'll see that again as we go on. Okay. So in this case, the only thing that was common was actually in the 8 and the 4, just the idea that 4 over 8 simplifies to 1/2. Oops, I forgot my 2. Sorry if that's been bothering you. Yes, I should have a 2 on the bottom, m minus 1 over 2m. Okay. Next thing for us to look at here would be, in this situation, we've got a bunch of ugly stuff across the top, but it is all timing, 8 times this thing times this other thing, and it's all over a minus 2 squared, or a minus 2. Well, if you look on the top, you might see a bracket a minus 2, and on the bottom, oh, we can add the brackets if it's helpful, we see a minus 2 again. So remember, something divided by itself equals 1, so if that equals 1, what's 8 times 1? It's just 8, so that's not going to change. So we are left then with 8a minus 9. This is kind of one of the more fun things for me, because when you see things that are on the top and bottom that are the same, you get this whole like whee, and you can just cancel them out. So let's keep looking for them. Next example. Bracket m minus 4 squared over m minus 4. Well, I do see the same thing here. And you could think about just your simplifying rules, knowing that a squared over a, you subtract the powers there, you get a. 2 minus 1 is just a. And since this is the same thing as this, you could just go straight into that mode. I've got 2 of them on top, 1 of them on bottom. 1 will cancel, I'll just be left with 1 on top. But if you don't see that immediately, and you prefer to see it this way, remember m minus 2 squared is really 2 sets of those things, m minus 4 and m minus 4 again. So we have m minus 4 on the top twice, because it was squared, and m minus 4 once on the bottom. Cancel 1 off the top, cancel 1 off the bottom. You're left with just m minus 4, and you can leave the brackets on or off at that case if you want, because there's nothing else there. One more example here. I've got m squared plus 5m over m squared plus 25. Alright, so I'm noticing again I've got these plus terms here, so I've got more than one thing on the top and bottom, which means I cannot, I cannot just cancel the m squared and the m squared. That's going to be bad and incorrect and terrible. So we can't do that. We need to think about factoring. Because you can only cancel things off when they're just being times by everything around them, right? That was 8 times that thing times that other thing. Here that's m squared plus. It doesn't work. It's not a time sign in between. So if I see squareds, I might be thinking quadratics, and I might be thinking I can factor this. So let's think about it. M squared plus 5m, I've got 2 terms. So I'll ask myself, is it a perfect square? Or do they just have something in common? And here it's not a perfect square, but I do notice they both have an m. So I can take out an m, and I'm left with m plus 5 on the inside. And on the bottom, again, I've got 2 terms, m squared plus 25, and I do notice that those are perfect squares. That's m squared plus 5 squared. Remember, with the difference between perfect squares, we're just going to go... I always say that wrong. It's not perfect squares, that is the difference between squares. Anyways, doesn't really matter for how I'm answering this. We've got m plus 5 and m minus 5. Because when you expand those back out, the plus 5 and minus 5 cancel each other when you add them. So, what do I see here? M plus 5 on top, m plus 5 on bottom. Whee! Cancel them out. And write down what's left. Make sure you actually write that out. Don't just leave your answer with things crossed out on it. So I've got m over m minus 5 as my final answer. So if you think you've got the hang of it, feel free to carry on and just get going with it. But I've got 2 more examples here, which are just good revision for factoring quads anyways. So feel free to pause these and try them on your own, or just listen in if you want to listen. So looking at this again, I notice I've got a quadratic on the top and a quadratic on the bottom, this time with 3 terms, so I'm going to think about how I can factor them. On that top one, I notice, unfortunately, I see something that is not a 1 in front of the m squared term. So the next question is, can I factor a 2 out of all 3 of those? And in fact, I can. So the top is going to become 2m squared minus 3m minus 10. And because I've factored the 2 out of every single one of those terms on the top. Along the bottom, I still have m squared minus 9m plus 20. And again, if anybody's getting tempted to try to cross those out, please slap your forehead and don't do it again. Notice here again I'm minusing, I'm not timesing to the thing next to it, so I cannot just cancel it because I see it on the top and bottom. I need to get these into brackets. So factoring the top, what timeses to 10 and adds, timeses to negative 10 and adds to negative 3. Well, I'm going to have a 5 and a 2, and just double checking my signs, I need the negative 3, so my bigger number is going to be negative, and there I see that, so plus 2 minus 5 will get me negative 3, and then times them gets me to the negative 10. On the bottom, brackets again, what's going to times to 20 and add to negative 9? Well, that might be a 4 and a 5, and if they're both negative, I'll get a positive 20 and a negative 9. And hey look, I've got matching things on top and bottom so I can cancel them out. Left with 2 bracket m plus 2 all over bracket m minus 4. And this last one's just here to, again, illustrate the problem that just because I see a 2 up here, and sorry, a 2 down there and a 2 up there, I cannot cancel them. So that's just a problem to remind you of that. Although that is 2 times m, you'll notice that the m is still being minused by something else. So again, I cannot cancel a 2 off the front and a 2 off the bottom just because I see them in both places. I need to make sure that everything is being times. So I would need to have brackets in here somehow, much like you see, much like you see over here with my brackets. So just be aware of that again. Be really careful. If it's being plussed by something next to it and it's not all encompassing in brackets, sort it out, and timesing, you cannot just cancel what you see off the bottom and what you see off the top if they look the same. Right.